guys, it's Rachel here, and today I wanted to talk to you about last year's garden. Now, I definitely don't keep it a secret on this channel that I really don't know what I'm doing most of the time. I am a second year gardener, and yes, I know a little bit more than I did before, and that's a lot of what I share with you guys. But I am still very new at this, and I wanted to talk about last year's garden today because I wanted to show you guys how far you can come in just a single year. I am working with approximately the same space that I was before, and I am on track-ish to get way more harvest from the space that I'm using. And before we go any further, I do apologize for the quality of the video and pictures that I have. I definitely was not taking them with the intent of sharing them with YouTube. A lot of the pictures I took just because my friends were interested in what was going on in my garden. So those are mostly going to be vertical videos, and I'm sorry for that. But I just wanted to give you guys an impression of what I had my first year so that you can see the kind of growth that's possible within just a second year of gardening. So one of the first things I did in my garden last year was I started my sprouts in egg trays. I just have one picture of this here. And that turned out to not be so great for me. You can see that the inner tray is one of those cardboardy ones, the papery ones that breaks down. And what I found personally was that my plant's roots got stuck in those egg cartons. And so when it came time to try and transplant them out, I was just breaking roots all over the place. And this is a picture of the little 4x4 garden that I have there in the back. The first year my dad and I built together this cage to go around it, which I've since determined was a little much and not really necessary. It was also really hard to work around, so that's why I don't have that anymore. But as you can see, this is the first thing I planted in here were these marigolds. I got them from the store, and I just knew that they were supposed to help ward off pests. And with all that forest back behind there that you can see, I was a little worried about some things coming out to chomp on my garden, so it's definitely very overprotective. So here's that same little back garden now that I've planted up in it. It's a little hard to tell, but in there I have so many herbs. I have sage, oregano, there's a thyme plant in there. I think I put a mint plant in there. I also have 2 tomato plants. They were determinate, mind you, but also look at how little space I gave them. That is not enough space for tomato plants. And then also near the front, I had some carrots that I was trying to regrow from the tops. And I have since learned that that is a great way to grow carrot greens and definitely not a good way to grow carrots. You will never regrow a carrot from a carrot top. If you want the actual root carrot part, you have to grow from seed. And I didn't know that yet, so that's why that's there. So this is probably the most complete garden tour that I have from last year. I don't have any other pictures of most of these plants, so just excuse the bad placement of words. I had tried to grow some broccoli in containers, and at the end of the day, that just didn't work out so well. However, the basil did turn out really quite well. And then the patio tomato here, it did all right, but at the end of the day only produced a couple of fruits and then died again. Now, like I said, the basil was very prolific. That took off, and the green beans actually did produce 1 or 2 meals worth of beans just for me as a single person. Zucchini in a container that small failed really hard. I would not do that again. And for some reason, my strawberries didn't turn out so well either. I'm not sure what it was, whether it was the light, but they all mostly died back. Now, I would say the biggest success from last year was all of these peppers. I got fairly good harvests from most of these peppers, and I even have some sauce that I made from the Tabasco pepper. So if you never knew before, this 4x4 garden is actually behind my yard, outside my fence. And here it is again. It's a little more grown than that other video that I showed you. The kale, I think, is probably what did the best out of all of here. And that sage plant back there, that is still there. Here's a better view of that tomato plant that you saw. The fruits that you see on it in this picture are all that I got off of it. Quickly after this picture was taken, it died back. I still am not entirely sure what happened. It was probably some form of fungus. Could have been the heat. Maybe I didn't water it enough. But it definitely did not do well for some reason or another. All right, so this is a picture of the bigger bed that y'all see me work in most of the time. It is so lush and green back there because of all of the kudzu that basically takes over this area in the summer. It is a lot to handle, I'll tell you that much. And this garden wasn't actually mine at this time that the picture was taken. I was taking care of it for my neighbors who lived directly next door. They had seen me planting out the littler one, the one that's closer to my yard, and they decided that they were going to plant some stuff here. So what you're seeing here is there's 2 habanero plants, there are 2 green pepper plants, there's 2 banana pepper plants, and then in the back that you can't see, there's a jalapeno. And then this big thing in the bed, it is a cherry tomato plant. And since it wasn't mine, it wasn't pruned properly, so it bushed out really, really big. And this isn't even as big as it got. But it provided so many tomatoes, and basically got everywhere. I'm so surprised that it stayed alive as long as it did because of all the branches that were laying on the ground. You can see here in these later pictures that the neighbors actually resorted to staking it up with very large, tall rebar. Each of those rebar is taller than me standing in the bed. So that plant was just massive. That is only one tomato plant right there. Here's the only real picture I have of my trellis from last year. This is before it was really full. And this is something I kind of started at the end of the growing season. These beans didn't really have enough time to grow up and produce very many beans or pods. So hopefully this year we'll make better use of the trellis. Something else interesting that happened to me last year was this squash plant. As you can see, it volunteered right out of my compost pile. So theoretically, it was a seed from something that I ate at one point. And I saw that it was a squash. I didn't know what it was, and I was like, well, it's doing fine. I'll leave it there. And then a month or 2 months later, it had grown into this behemoth, and was taking over my yard and was gonna climb the AC unit right there, but I had to turn it around. And it started producing this fruit. Looked like maybe it was gonna be a melon. I wasn't sure. And it had a few other fruits on it that it tried to make, and most of those died off, so I just had this one. And by the end of the growing season, it was pretty clear to me that this was a pumpkin of sorts. It turned orange. Didn't look like anything I'd ever eaten. The only pumpkins I'd eaten I got from the store. They were either jack-o'-lantern pumpkins or the little pie pumpkins. And I was thinking maybe that this squash got cross-pollinated with something else that was around. The only other squash I had in the yard at all was a zucchini plant that failed pretty early on in the season. So I'm just not really sure. Although that pumpkin did grow into this beautiful orange thing. I cut it open and I could not believe how beautifully bright orange it was inside. And the pumpkin bread I made with it was also very beautifully orange. It almost looked like I had used food coloring orange. So I'm saved some seeds from that pumpkin and am trying to germinate them as we speak. We'll see how that goes. So that's most of what I had going on. I just want to touch a little harder on some of the things that didn't work for me so that maybe you can avoid them. Again, growing a zucchini plant in a container, especially a container of this size, it was just not enough. It didn't have enough room, it wasn't getting enough water, and you could see it's clearly very stressed out. And not long after this picture, the whole thing just died back. So I definitely don't recommend planting zucchini like that in a container unless the container is at least twice as big as that. I don't know, maybe even bigger. Another thing that happened to me is a lot of my peppers rotted just like this. I'm not entirely sure what happened to them. Maybe an insect got into them and started this hole, and then the hole started rotting. Because it's not on the end, it doesn't look like blossom end rot to me. But something was missing with these peppers specifically. And I unfortunately had quite a lot of peppers that ripened up like this. Something else that happened, in this picture next to the smaller raised bed, you can see this black container. And honestly, anybody could have probably told me going into this that this was a bad idea, but I found the container, it was already full of soil. It was out back by this bed when I first found it and cleared it out. And instead of replacing the soil, instead of fertilizing the soil, I literally just tried to plant directly into whatever old potting mix was still in that container. And that did not end very well. All you can see in here, there's a peppermint plant that kind of went wild and did mostly okay. And then some basil that I let go to seed because it was looking really, really raggedy, not really good to eat. So I still grew things in here, but they were not good things. They were not pretty things that I wanted to eat. So definitely I would say always amend your soil. You can reuse old potting soil. It's still good soil, but amend it. And maybe don't use random potting mix that you find back in the woods behind your house. All right, guys. Well, that was my first year garden. And as you can see, I have already made a lot of progress from that point. So again, like I was saying, you can go from year 1 to year 2 and learn a lot of things. The point is just to try things. There are so many things I tried. If I hadn't tried, I still wouldn't know that they don't work. So just keep trying, keep doing stuff. This is an adventure for all of us, really. I think even people who've been gardening for years and years are still learning things, so keep that in mind too. And I also wanted to say how thankful I am that you guys have been so encouraging and so positive as I go through this journey kind of publicly with you guys. So thank you for that. I came on the internet expecting a few mean people here and there, but so far I haven't found them. All of you guys are so kind, so encouraging, so thank you for that. And that's really all I have for you guys today. Thank you for watching and happy gardening. Thank you guys for watching.